We are normally here to talk about partnership with Royal Borough of Greenwich, but also to talk about the wider principles of partnering with the public sector. We're all trying to build energy networks here, whether it be electrical, fibre, in the case of Metropolitan, and but principally, in our case, heat. Heat is being wasted. All around the world it's being wasted. Anecdotally, and I have no idea if this is true or not, but I heard at a presentation the other day, there is 100% of Europe's heat requirement can be met by Europe's waste heat. Likewise with the UK. Supposedly, again, 70% of London's waste heat provided by 70% of London's heat provided by its waste heat. And what we're therefore trying to do is take networks, and as Mike so very well said, it's all about the network. You can stick what you want at the beginning of it, but the network is the key. And in turn, how you then sell the heat at the other end of it, how you provide your residents with heat, and how you fund it. Just very briefly about us. Pinnacle as a group has been operating for a long time, and on the basis it's got quite a lot of long-term contracts, will continue to operate for quite a long time. The principle is all about long-term partnerships, and I think when you're talking about the temperature of someone's shower, you should remember that it has to be a long-term trusted partnership. We work a lot with the public sector, with the private sector, investing and transforming communities. Pinnacle Power in the middle there is what I'm talking about today. So, people focus in many, many different ways on how heat and in turn electricity might be distributed around. I mean, if you look at the availability of heat source, you've got everything in the world there, from geothermal, biomass, natural gas, solar, waste heat, and God knows what, this bit here, future energy sources. The world is going to continue to change, and inevitably those sources there in 10 years' time will be potentially obsolete, they'll potentially be changed, they'll be different. The important bit is what you do with that. The key for us is you take it and put it into a network of pipes or electrical cables, and you send it around without transmission losses, and without large charges, and give it to your residents in a sort of reasoned way. To my mind, the Coventry scheme you were talking about, anything where you take energy from waste or energy from waste heat and pump it into a network is a good thing to be doing. It must be better than burning gas in an individual boiler in an individual house. So from a policy perspective, we've focused very heavily on electricity over the last few years, the feed-in tariffs, the ROCs, so on and so forth. We've been working very hard at how to do that, but we haven't really touched the sides, to my mind, on heat. We've got this target, 12% from a low-carbon renewable source, and we're miles off it. How are we going to achieve that? To my mind, it's that. We take waste heat, we put it into a network. Hindu people have talked about a lot, and I think what they're doing is fantastic. So anyone who can use the Hindu skills, I think, is a very, very, very sensible thing to do. The future lies, this is, again, a deck slide, there is 2 billion quid's worth of capital investment coming in the next 10 years into heat networks. That, as a businessman, I put this in front of our board, as a business proposition is very exciting. And local government is the most important player in that situation. The operation and maintenance contracts coming out of that, even bigger. It's absolutely critical that we take the move to decarbonise, this week in case in point, and run with it. Make a real sector out of this. And ideally, a non-subsidy reliant sector. So, as I say, heat must be linked to low carbon sources, be it waste heat, be it waste to energy. And supposedly, and this is again a European slide, 60 million EU citizens are being served by district heating as we stand. How does that work? They have various different models, and we've already heard a few different ways. But we've got to find a way in this country of delivering that properly. And local government, as I say, must play a massive part. So what happened in Greenwich Peninsula, which is what I'm here to talk about? There was an area which Tony Blair covered with 6 foot of soil and a plastic membrane, as far as I can tell. He built the O2 Arena, well, the O2 Arena was built. And then we had this sort of challenge that houses need to be built. So Night Dragon, well, as the nth degree of iteration of property developer came on, and we're basically told you need to have a heat network. So they have embraced it, and they've embraced, most specifically, public sector money which has come into it as well. This, by the way, is the energy centre, and it's something which they as a developer and council, the Greenwich Borough Council as a council, have really focused on. That blade has got what's called lenticular dazzle camouflage gone onto the front of it, which seems to be the most expensive way of cladding a chimney you can possibly imagine. But technically it's a complete nightmare, I warn you. But that is at the gateway to the peninsula. There's a large number of social homes there. There is a large number of private sector homes there. And the idea is you make a massive statement and say, look, we're low carbon. We're proud of it. We put this very expensive sculpture right on that's the approach word to the Blackwall Tunnel. And we're going to really focus on this. And I'll come on to how they've done it more. Royal Borough of Greenwich put in £7 million. That came from various different sources in turn, from the GLA, from the HCA. And they did that so they could get regulation. So they really focused on how we're going to protect our customers. And that, to my mind, is, if I could get any message across, is the core to what we're trying to achieve. The funding sources we talked about all come down to a return on investment, an IRR, whether it's the wrong thing. But ultimately, this money is coming from people who are wanting hot showers or to have a hot house, or in the case of industrial, have a process which is happening properly. So we discount industrial and focus on people. The only way of doing it is to realise that, firstly, it's a low-risk income stream on the basis that people do tend to pay for the heat they've got because they don't want it to be turned off. But that, in turn, must be regulated. And where can local government come into play? They can engage with that. One of the most important lessons we've had from this is that if you've got, as we do in this case, a governance committee sat on top of a heat network, suddenly people trust in you, they believe in you. No one in the heat network industry is trying to rip off residents. I think we can just take that as a fact. But yet there's this terrifying fear that they are. If you did, you'd be out of business within seconds. So people are trying to sort of persuade their residents, we're a trusted partner, we're trying to behave. How do you do it? You get the local authority to go through the data, engage with the data, and show your residents that you are behaving in a proper manner, you're treating them properly. And I speak as someone who spends a lot of their time worrying about this. How do you make sure that as a non-regulated utility, which is in effect a monopoly, is trusted? And I'll come on to how we've done that. So a local authority they regulate our heat price, they regulate our customer practice, they are part of the governance committee, and I can't stress enough how important that is, and they help us massively with getting future connections. And I'll come again onto it more. Big thing at the bottom, who governs the operator? And I'll come on to this, but we've got a monopolistic situation. Let's not try and hide from it. We're in a monopoly. It's a fact of life. And so what we need to do is say, how do we boot these people off? And so, to my mind, you focus very hard on having an operator at an arm's length contract, whether he's also put the money in or not, who can be kicked off if he's not doing a very good job. And it's really, really important to have that. This is the Greenwich Peninsula and the heat network in turn. The main energy centre is the one in yellow there, which I showed you a picture of. There's going to be 15,000 plus homes built there. The big circular thing at the top is the O2 Arena. There's a massive hotel down the bottom. Conveniently, the developers decided to put the four corners of the peninsula have different separate heat networks at the moment, which we're trying to connect up. And the reason the developer wanted to, as an aside from the public sector, the reason the developer wanted to control this, and I must say that Night Dragon, the developer, owned this network, is because they wanted to have control over exactly the same thing as what the council wanted. They wanted price control, they wanted customer service control, and they wanted to make sure they could really drive this forward. There was going to be a concession, and they decided not to go that route purely because they were concerned about the customers. And I think it's a really important thing to point out. This is, well, you've all seen this. This is what heat networks look like. This hotel is a particularly interesting one. And when we talk about base load, this is everything. It's a massive, massive, massive heat load. And they in turn, that company rejected a deal with, supposedly with T5, where there's a massive energy from waste plant, because they couldn't get the commercials right. So having the team after Hindu to then take a system from end to end and make sure you've got people contracting with you as a network is very, very important. So back onto the customers, what do we do to make sure that the customers felt protected? We created a brand. It's not our brand, very specifically. As I said, it's owned by the developer and, again, heavily governed by the local authority. It's called Loca, and the principle was that as a resident on the peninsula, you would feel engaged with, and you would feel that you could trust this brand, and that the brand is in turn looking after you. You have to have a heat supply agreement, and if you're contracting directly from ESCO to resident, you need to be very, very careful about how you behave, and you need to have a residential heat supply agreement, which firstly is short enough for people to be able to read, long enough to actually say all the things it needs to be in. And then we delivered a customer charter, which is all about telling residents how we're going to behave with them. This was all signed off by the local authority, and the Royal Borough of Greenwich were enormously helpful in showing us what they wanted. I have to say, as were the housing associations who work with us on this as well. The more people engage, the more ideas you get back, the more you can protect your customers. So I thought I'd talk about sort of linking into Greenwich. What are the barriers to district heating, and how can, in particular, local authorities help with that? Governance we've talked about. It's a monopolistic situation, and as I mentioned, having a local authority helping you and standing behind you and working with you is phenomenally useful. It makes the wheels go much, much better. Funding, there is no end, and I'll come on to this again, there are no end of sources, as Ian very correctly said. People are longing to invest in this, but it's not developed to a level yet where people can properly, investors can be absolutely certain they're not ripping off the residents they in turn don't see or contract with. But yet they still want to be involved, so how do you manage that? To my mind, the key here is to say, okay, there is a heating company, call it an SPV. There are multiple different sources of money you could take. It might be local authority money, it might not be. It might be private money, it might be Green Investment Bank money, and they've been very helpful. It might be anything. But take that, put it in a company which worries about money, and then in turn subcontract services out of it. Again, my opinion only, having the investor as the same person as the person contracting with the resident, or in turn operating the customer service of that resident, is a bad idea. But funding is key, and local authorities can help with that by either guaranteeing base loads, they can help by helping with governance, they can help by all sorts of things, but being part of the company is the best one to do. There's a massive time lag on this. We've got a situation in which the concept comes along. Hindu go and do a big research project. They find out that it's a very worthwhile thing to do. It can retrofit, it can do new build, but as sure as eggs are eggs, it will take a very, very, very long time to do. And if you've got the local authority standing behind that development, ideally as part of it, and Enfield's a very good example if anyone's involved with that, standing behind and saying, okay, we're going to help you force people to come as part of your network. We're going to help you be part of the governance. We're going to help you with planning. Suddenly, life becomes a lot better. Planning. Heat networks are sometimes mandatory. In London, they are mandatory almost everywhere if it's a big enough development. And having that planning process working in your favour is a godsend. Going to a funder and saying, everyone in this area, and we did this at Greenwich in particular, is obliged to connect to us if we can prove value for money, which you inevitably can if you've done your business modelling properly, is a seriously powerful tool to have in your armoury. And it's something which we focused very heavily on. The Aurora Hotel I put up before was a great example. We went to them and said, you have to connect if we can show value for money. We showed value for money, they connected. It was very simple. One of the key things with planning as well is to be aware of, and I'll come on to this in a bit, the fact that low carbon heat sources, if they can be sited as close to a heat network as possible, life becomes easier. Coventry's a good example. You had to dig up all the pipes, and all the city, and you did a great job in connecting it all up. If you've got that heat source, you should use it. Case in point, this has nothing to do with us, I must add. Sheffield have got at least 2, conceivably 3, heat networks and they've had one for ages, the Veolia one. This new one is a wood-to-energy power station, and anecdotally, I'm told the heat network was an add-on at the end, but they've had enormous success taking a heat network off that power station. They can make cheap heat, and it works very nicely. Very quickly on funding. As I've said before, divorcing the funder and the SPV from the operator is everything. If you can provide an operator which can be booted out, it suddenly stops being a monopoly. It starts being like a utility. This is in effect a utility. So what we have suggested, we've done in another one, in a not-for-profit organisation, we go in as a pure contractor, and we say, look, if we don't do a very good job, you can boot us off immediately. We did that, the particular one I talk about, for a development up in North London, where the developer gave the heat network to the residents, and we said, here we go. If it's not good enough, get rid of us. And that's the only way to manage that situation. We need to move to a more utility-based model, and funders should fund, builders should build, operators should operate. If they're all linked together, fine. They're all owned by the same person, fine. As long as there are arm's-length contracts from one to the other, we have a way of moving forward. Just briefly in summary, the private sector has got a major part to play in this because we can move quickly, because we can bring in various different funds, and because we can develop things. Pinnacle in particular has got a strong track record with local authorities and long-term partnerships, and I think it's something which, when brought to the heat network industry, is a very, very interesting place to be. If anyone's got any questions about that, do let me know. Thank you very much.